second decade of the 21st century once again had the whole world of DC on top. While the DCAU was an integral part, there was much to celebrate. DC Comics celebrated its 75th anniversary with a party that went into 2010. Why not? With one of the highest grossing films in history and high hopes on the very first Green Lantern live-action film, DC was living it up. While the big screen showed promise, so did the small screen. Along with the acclaimed animated programs, the success of the network show Smallville kept propelling Warner Bros. In DC. Smallville was heading into its final season after an incredible 10-year run. It was the first live-action television show to feature a DC superhero since the short-lived 1990s series The Flash, and the first successful live-action series featuring Superman since Lois and Clark in 1993. The show brought everyone's attention back to Superman, and it was as if all the missteps in the past were long forgotten. Christopher Nolan, the man who gave new life to the Batman film franchise, was asked to be the executive producer of the DC film branch of Warner Bros. To oversee any future projects that the studios would have in the works. Back in the world of DCAU, Bruce Timm and his staff showed no point in slowing down as they kept cranking out film projects. 2011 would be a very unique year for the animated original films, specifically with the Green Lantern live-action film on the horizon that summer. Unfortunately, tragedy would strike. One of the main cogs in the DCAU clock was the brilliant screenwriting of Dwayne McDuffie. Co-founder of Milestone Comics and the creator of the now popular Dakotaverse, met with an untimely death. One day after his 49th birthday, he would be rushed in for emergent heart surgery due to complications and would not survive the operation. See, one of the staples for Warner Brothers, he not only worked on the DCAU, but he also helped launch one of their most popular shows, Ben 10. This was a loss of a true hero, but in the darkness there is always light. Bruce Timm and the rest of the creators of so many amazing projects and films would be certain to make sure that Dwayne would not be forgotten. Ironically, the next DCAU film would be released a day after his death. It was not the last one that Dwayne McDuffie would write from their film library, but it would be certainly one to remember. Before any effort was made to hop on the Green Lantern bandwagon, the year started off with the next installment in the film library. All-Star Superman, based on Grant Morrison's miniseries, gave the fans a very nostalgic look at the Man of Steel. It would also be held in skepticism due to the fact that it would be the first film in the library to don a PG rating. Due to minor amounts of foul language and intense violence, it was the intensity of the characters and the story that really drove the film. It was a heartfelt look at Superman during his most vulnerable time, and how he would go to great lengths to make sure that the people he cared for were protected. The film also showed that Superman would even be able to find sympathy for those who hated him the most, and they would be able to do nothing but stand bewildered and never understanding why Superman would be that kind of a hero. The film struck a chord with being one of the fans' most major favorites in the library, and would only continue to keep growing. Finally, when the summer arrived, much like The Dark Knight, the next film would feature a project similar to Batman Gotham Knight. The film would be called Green Lantern Emerald Knights. Bringing Nathan Fillion, Jason Isaacs, and Henry Rollins to voice these ever-growing popular characters, the film was 6 interlocking stories which would lead up to a showdown in the Green Lantern Corps with a threat that had been dormant for centuries. The film captured origin stories of various lanterns that the fans of the DCAU may not have known about. As the fall was on the approach, there would be 2 things happening in the world of DCAU. The TV bug had yet again bit Bruce Timm after being somewhat of a hiatus from television. The timing couldn't have been better due to NBC's monumental failure to bring a brand new live-action Wonder Woman series to television. It had failed with so many test audiences and focus groups that the actual pilot was scrapped before it would even air. There would already be pieces of information leaked to the public via the internet, and of course teasers featured at that year's Comic-Con. Still, it was almost time for the world to be introduced to the most dominant force in cable television, DC Nation. Successfully concluding the DCAU storyline, the question was where the next series would come from. One of the goals was to make a show that would give the fans a chance to see characters that were not as popular as Superman or Batman. Another major factor was trying new animation styles to give the fans something never seen. In November of 2010, the next television show would premiere, and it would be called Young Justice. This would be a story that would feature an entirely different DCAU. It would have a new look and an entire new voice cast. Andrea Romano, who had been very successful in finding the right voices to go with the characters, would also not be included in this new show. Brandon Vietti, who was a face that Bruce Timm knew well and was also the director of Batman Under the Red Hood, would helm this new project. While a series like the Teen Titans featured younger heroes in the DCAU, Young Justice would not only have them as the main focus of the series, the Justice League would be an element of the series as well. Names like Robin, Superboy, and Kid Flash would be the second line of defense in protecting the world, but they would be going on covert missions that the Justice League would give them. Led by Batman, trained by Black Canary, and watched over by Martian Manhunter, Captain Marvel, and Red Tornado, these heroes would learn exactly what it's like to face the true masters of evil. The teams would go up against major rogues galleries, unlike the Teen Titans who had their own villains to battle, but there would also be another battle to face: growing up and developing feelings for one another and becoming a true family. The show would not be without a little fan appreciation. Wendy and Marvin from the classic show The Super Friends would even make an appearance as classmates of Superboy and Miss Martian. Of course, there would be no project overlooked at this point in time without giving a tribute to Dwayne McDuffie. In the case of Young Justice, the Justice League and the Young Team would open their doors to Icon and his sidekick Rocket, two characters that were created by McDuffie in his company Milestone Comics. The Young Justice also featured a great voice cast including Jesse McCartney, Danica McKellar, and Bruce Greenwood, who would be the second actor to ever reprise his role as Batman in the DCAU alongside Kevin Conroy. Young Justice had a successful season with 26 episodes, and a second season beginning after that. At the same time, Bruce Timm made it clear that he wanted to eventually return to his roots of his old animation style. In spring 2011, he would do just that, with a small twist. Green Lantern would get his very own animated series, and he would get a special airing of the pilot. This show, however, would break serious ground as the very first DCAU series to be animated in CGI. The pilot would be the most important airing to see the response of fans as well as new viewers. The series would not be an origin story, rather have Hal Jordan already established as a full Green Lantern. The series would be an ongoing story much like Justice League and Superman, and it would feature a brand new evil which was very popular in the comics, the Red Lantern Corps. The pilot was a hit, and it was announced that it would be back with a continuing first season of Young Justice. The DCAU had made its return to television, and of course the films would continue to be released. The final film in 2011 was Batman Year One, based on Frank Miller's graphic novel. It also featured the final DC showcase short, Catwoman, voiced by Eliza Dushku. As the tumultuous year finally ended, 2012 would end up being the most successful year for the DCAU. The year started off with Justice League Doom, the final script written by Dwayne McDuffie. The film would feature once again an intense action story, which, alongside the preceding Batman Year One, would bump the DCAU films back up to the constant PG-13 rating. The film would feature the ever-favorite, the Legion of Doom, but it would not consist of the traditional villains. Instead, the Legion would be led by the mysterious yet ruthless Vandal Savage. Savage was a character that flourished in the DCAU, making multiple appearances, and at this time his intentions would be no different. Signing up villains like Bane, Mirror Master, and Star Sapphire, they would be paid to take out the Justice League the way that one of their own would. The film exposed these famed heroes and brought their most vulnerable sides to life, and in the end, when they discovered how the village managed to hit them so hard, they could only be devastated knowing that someone that was their friend and ally had a plan to destroy them. At the same time, DC Nation was the talk of the town with an entire new time slot that would feature two now popular shows, Green Lantern the Animated Series and Young Justice, but it would also come with a bonus. The DC Nation shorts, which were independent comedic shorts featuring anything from sing-along to stop-motion, would air between episodes of the shows. Showing these heroes from a comedy standpoint was an area that had never been tackled. While back in the days of Hanna-Barbera there was comedy, but the heroes would usually find themselves still battling the forces of evil. These collections would be enjoyed and featured on YouTube and other forms of media. These shorts featured names like director Lauren Faust, whose biggest claim to fame was the successful Cartoon Network series The Powerpuff Girls. Aardman Studios, the creator of Wallace and Gromit, would also contribute. Young Justice would receive numerous award nominations, and Green Lantern would end the summer with 13 episodes under its belt. Soon after, Green Lantern would get a renewal for a second season, and Young Justice would be airing its second season. The series would go through a dramatic change, aging the characters 5 years into the future. Robin would have grown up to become the leader of the team under the name of Nightwing, and the team would also grow. Characters like Blue Beetle, Beast Boy, and even Wonder Girl would become members. The show would have a massive gap in the storyline, and unfortunately would go into hiatus after ending in an enormous cliffhanger. The 2011-2012 television season would end with fans left in suspense, waiting for these two series to continue. Of course, there would be something to keep them occupied: the next DCAU film, Superman vs. the Elite. It was a rip-roaring story about Superman taking on a new opponent, or so-called heroes known as the Elite. George Newbern would reprise his role as Superman as he tried to tell these heroes that violence and death does not have to be the answer to solving crime and punishing evil. The film was graphic, very sexually driven, and making sure that the PG-13 rating was there, it ended with Superman battered and bruised and completely off his rocker, as he would teach the Elite just what being a hero is all about. The film would be a nice treat to hold the fans down while the television season would be soon approaching. Of course, that moment would finally arrive with a taste of things yet to come. After a strong summer at the movies thanks to The Dark Knight Rises, fans were eagerly awaiting a new season of DC comic television. One of the biggest surprises was the brand new live-action series on the CW, Arrow. But of course, DC Nation was united and waiting for their shows to return to Cartoon Network. Superman vs. the Elite's main attraction would be the preview that featured the next DCAU film project. It was called The Dream Project, the big one. The film would be based on what is known as one of the stories that changed comics forever, Frank Miller's 1986 masterpiece, The Dark Knight Returns. A 4-part comic series, the story of a retired Batman who has seen his city that he has protected for years gone to waste under a new kind of crime. This caused Bruce Wayne to wear the cape and cowl once again, but this time he had had enough. The story was grimy, intensely violent, and featured a lot of gore and blood. It was also the first time that a female Robin would be introduced to the world of DC Comics. A project being this important was the first DCAU film to be split into 2 parts. Each part would feature 2 books of the 4-part story. Part 1 being released in the fall of 2012, and the second part being released in 2013. There was even an announcement that the Warner Premiere label would be shutting down due to poor DVD and Blu-ray sales, but it was made clear that the DCAU projects were safe until 2013. 2013 will conclude The Dark Knight Returns, with a successful sale of Part 1 and a voice cast featuring Peter Weller, Ariel Winter, and David Selby. Part 2 will add the talents of Michael Emerson as the Joker and Mark Valley as the voice of Superman. 2013 will also feature the releases of the rest of the new DCAU films: Superman Unbound, based on the comic miniseries Superman Brainiac, and Justice League Flashpoint, a story that introduced the world of DC Comics to a new era of comic storytelling known as the New 52. Alongside the films, Green Lantern the Animated Series and Young Justice unfortunately were cut short in their fall premiere release in 2012, and it was announced that they would be returning to television in the winter of 2013 to prepare for the brand new hour of shows that would eventually join DC Nation. The success of the DC shorts would allow it to receive its very own 30-minute show, also allowing a certain group of heroes to make a big return to television. Teen Titans Go, which would be based on the DC Nation short The New Teen Titans. The show would feature the Teen Titans pint-sized and more cartoonish than before. It would be strictly a comic adventure, allowing them to deal with themselves and trying to solve problems on each other before they kill one another. Probably the one project that is wrapped in the most controversy is the brand new Batman CGI show, Beware the Batman. The show, being the very first Batman CGI series, would feature an entire new look to the Dark Knight, including a gun-wielding and spry Alfred and a new sidekick named Kitana. The Rogues Gallery of villains would also not have the names that are featured normally, but it would include a couple of Silver Age DC Comics Batman villains that have not been mentioned in years. Not many know exactly if these 2 new shows would be a hit, but in 2013, when DC Nation returns, we will learn just what all of the new series are all about. The world of animation caters to a whole new generation, and yet for the first time an older generation that refuses to grow up. The world of comic book characters has changed a great deal, and the way they have been featured in other media vehicles has evolved in ways no one would have thought possible. What can be certain is the fact that these characters have been modified in ways that keep them timeless, and as far as time itself will go, generations that will continue to live on this earth will forever know exactly what it's like to be a hero.
And in my quiet desperation wasn't any indication that my life